we'll continue.
All right. Thank you, Walter. Well, good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you're located this fine day. On behalf of Walter and Cindy and Peggy, it is my pleasure to welcome you all to Play Experience number 4, Exploring the Art and Science of Self-Active Play. My name's Carly Bedard, and I'm an early childhood coach and trainer here in Orange County, California. And I'm so excited to be here with you all and just look forward to an amazing time together. Before I set the context a little bit and let you know a little bit about the purpose and our goals for today, I did just want to attend to a few housekeeping items. You see on your screen the reminders. If you would like to input your name and email address in the chat box, we'll be able to send some follow-up correspondence. Feel free to have your play materials ready because that's going to be one of the first things that we get to do, dive into the heart of our experience and time together, which will be that self-active play experience. So have your materials and journaling items. And then just a reminder or note that our session will be recorded just so that we can revisit it and learn from our experience together. One other kind of housekeeping item, we will have available for you all a participant guide that will include, sorry, I just have to move my screen here really quickly so I can get to it for you. Our participant guide will include links to all of the resources that we shared today, as well as the email addresses for all of the presenters and follow-up play resources, links to the work of Walter and Peggy and Cindy, some amazing book links. So know that you'll have that available. I'll pop that in the chat box for you all so that you'll have an opportunity to fully be present during our time together, but know that you'll have access to all of the resources that we're sharing. And I'm putting that in the chat box for you now. All right, with that, I'm going to stop sharing that slideshow. And again, kind of let you know a little bit about our goals and our hope for our time together. It's nice to see some familiar faces. This is the 4th virtual play experience that I have had the opportunity to join Walter in helping to support. And today we're going to explore play and STEM specifically. And our hope is that you're going to be able to view those two areas as mutually supportive processes that enrich and inspire one another. Today, you're going to have the opportunity to experience self-active play for yourself if it's the first time, or maybe it's your 100th time experiencing self-active play. You're going to have an opportunity to discover the imaginative, creative, and inventive state that play fosters, which you hear a lot of beautiful science terms in there, right? The process of collaborating with Walter and Cindy and Peggy has been just that. I think it's really mirrored that imagination and exploration that this play is all about. And although this play experience was never designed to be done on these screens, it was designed to be done in person with actual humans in the same room. I continue to be amazed at how this experience can actually transcend these screens and how it can bring us together even when we may be physically distanced and separated from one another. As we were preparing for today's presentation, I was struck by the connection that Walter and Peggy and Cindy and I all had having experienced this self-active play. And that really was a guiding force in our conversation. And it's really been what's provided us the opportunity to maintain that posture that we're going to explore today. Again, that state of inventiveness, imagination, and exploring possibilities. I think it's especially important during this time that we are all facing, living through a global pandemic. I don't want to minimize, of course, the pain and hurt and suffering that we're experiencing, but one of the areas of hope and inspiration that I've found through this time has been that reimagining state that we're all in. And certainly Walter has displayed that in reimagining what this experience might look like, even though it's not being done in person. So I hope that you'll find that to be your experience for this morning as well. We're here to share with you again because of the fact that we've all experienced the power of this play firsthand. And it does remind me of the gift that this time you're about to experience is. One of our primary goals again for today will be for you to experience this self-active play as a way of generating insight into children's play and promoting long-term physical science and engineering investigations. The purpose of our time together includes an opportunity, again, for you to experience self-active play. And it is our hope that you experience the power, the joy, and the peace of that time. We have very busy lives and there's lots of interruptions throughout our day to day. So I do hope that you find this time as a gift for yourself to be able to pause, to breathe, for you to connect with yourself and to connect with these materials. So today we're going to again begin with the experience. We're going to have opportunities for you to reflect on that experience. And then we're going to bring in the lovely Peggy and Cindy, who will help us make some distinct connections between our experience and STEM concepts. We'll have the opportunity to watch a video of some children in play. So again, welcome to our time together. I know these 90 minutes are going to fly by, so without any further ado, it's my pleasure to welcome Walter to introduce our solo play experience.
Thank you, Carly. You are a most gracious being yourself, and it's a supreme treat to have your assistance in making this all possible today. And to join with Carly in welcoming all you other folks who are sharing your Saturday here today. So I'd like to kick this off by also saying that my wife, Kitty, who sits beside me, has been my partner for 42 years, and also the co-creator of the Institute for Self-Active Education, which really grew out of our work in Boston. It's good you can be here, hon. Yeah. All right. Now, so I'd like to make a couple of points to consider and weave them together for just a moment, and then we'll be playing before you know it. This one thought is the support of community is important to our development. Community. I'm saying that specifically because of how much I appreciate having the opportunity to ship boxes of play materials to Boston's annual, to NACY's annual conference all over the country. For 27 years, we presented a 3-hour hands-on play experience that included both solo play and cooperative play. So I appreciate NACY, the National Association for the Education of Young Children. If you're not a member, please become one. And also the Play Policy and Practice Interest Forum of NACY. In addition to that, my interest in play grew exponentially because of my association with the Association for the Study of Play, TASP, T-A-S-P. It's having its 47th International Conference this winter on March 20th, a virtual conference, first time ever. And if you don't know about TASP, please check it out. It's a premier research organization. Also like to say that as a member of NACY, I'm also a member of the Florida Association for the Education of Young Children, FLACY. And we have a play chapter, which has been built into the infrastructure of NACY as a way of supporting teachers and promoting play. Having said that, I wanted to make a point about why solitary play, why not cooperative play, which is predominantly what we focus on. And as a way of introducing that, I'd like to read something that Carly Bedard passed to me the other day very excitedly. It's the first time ever I've seen this in relationship to early learning standards. This was from the California preschool curriculum frameworks, especially with regards to social and emotional development. And I won't read the whole thing, just the key point, in which these are the early learning standards for California. And in there, it says children must be allowed to freely choose and pursue interests and activities, both alone and with others. It's that word alone that I am so pleased to see emphasized in early learning standards. Why solitary play? Well, part of our reason for being together today is to experience solitary play really as creative contemplation, a moment away from everything else that's going on, to regroup in a sense, to rekindle your attention inward, to be in touch with one's intuitive self. It's a blessing to be able to do that, take a break and be calm the mind, open the mind, relax the mind. And that's what this solo play, which we really must get into now and do, is so important. One reason it's so important. But before I do, I don't want to miss this opportunity of reading to you a passage, a short passage in a book that Henry Olds and I and his wife Anita wrote. This is the book, and it was written
Backwards.
motivating today's students, strategies, activities, approaches to help teachers motivate students. 1977, in which we quoted Jean Piaget in a short passage. I'm going to read if you. This is. There we go. Experience is always necessary for intellectual development, but I fear that we may fall into the illusion that being submitted to an experience that is a demonstration is sufficient for a subject to disengage the structure involved. But more than this is required, Piaget says. The subject must be active, self-active, must transform things and find the structure of his own actions on the objects. When I say active, I mean it in two senses. One is acting on material things, but the other means doing things in social collaboration, in a group effort. That leads to a critical frame of mind where children must communicate with each other. This is an essential factor in intellectual development, in play development, in human development. So in a nutshell, we are virtually doing that when we collaborate in this way on a different level. But the solitary play that you are now about to do is an adjunct, is a co-requisite. It's the partner in the experience of collaboration. So let's do that now. For 15 minutes, we are, with your materials, each of us in our own way, going to explore and compose and build something that doesn't exist from within ourselves. This capacity to create, to organize, to play is a spiritual gift that we all have. It's different from ants and other bugs and things, but we can actually create. So 15 minutes, we're going to put on some soft music and we'll keep time. And after that, as Carly has said, we'll have time for a breakout room, for reflection, for group processing. In your play, whatever arises is like a meditation. However, given this is focused on science, if you feel or see in your play with those materials any connection with your understanding of science, remember that, make a note, because we're going to kind of pick at what the experience is in the play and how it relates to the science. Let me see. Of course, there's no talking. If you would mind just being silently talking with yourself, listening to yourself. So I think that's it for now. So um, now let's just transition for 15 or so minutes. We'll give you a warning before time is up, and you just go into that play space and enjoy your explorations with those materials. Let that flow of consciousness just arrive spontaneously and enjoy that experience. Just relax and have a fun time while Carly puts on some flute music by Wiley Rankin. Thank you again for being present. It's wonderful to be together this way. Thank you. Okay, maybe another another minute or so, and then we're going to shift. About another minute. Okay. So let's go ahead and transition out of the play for just a moment. Just imagine that you were um, in a space of creative contemplation, and something happened outwardly to those materials and inwardly. Um, if you're comfortable, just closing your eyes, sitting in place for a moment, 1 minute. I'll keep time for 60 seconds, and let your mind drift back to those last 15 minutes of constructive play. Okay. So that was one moment following about 15 minutes of exploration and discovery. Um, would you now take that paper and pen or pencil in hand, and as freely as you did with the materials, scribe, write, compose as freely as you can what happened? What was that experience like for you? And if possible, see if you can connect some science content with what you did. Your fingers engaged, your mind engaged, your heart engaged. You know, this is part, I think, of what the Kiwanis International mean by young children priority one, to help them get their hands, their hearts, and their minds connected. So do a little journaling for 4 or 5 minutes, and or drawing, and see what happens next. Okay. Well, let's say that's a little reflection on your experience, a little journaling or drawing about what happened. And now, a special treat and part of the sharing is to have an opportunity to meet with one other person and to share about the experience, to pair up, to buddy up. And the way we'd like to do this is for each of you to have a chance to be with one other person in a breakout room. Is that right, Carly?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. So without further ado, is there anything else you'd like to add, Carly?
Just a reminder when you're in your breakout session to share about your experience. If you're able to articulate your device and maybe show each other what you created, we would invite that opportunity. And then make sure you provide that equitable time for you to each share. You'll have about 5 to 6 minutes in your breakout room times.
Okay, I'd like to add to that. That's 5 or 6 total time. And the sharing, see if you can take turns where who's going to speak first and who's going to listen. And then we reverse the role. So for 3 or so minutes, each of you, just freely as you played, as you journaled, speak about whatever it is that happened and any connections you may see with science. Breakout rooms right now.
Did you say 3 or 4 total minutes or per person?
Let's see.
Per person. We'll have about 6 total minutes. Thank you for double checking.
37, 17, 18.
Are we at a breakout?
Hi.
I don't know yet if we're in.
I can hear you.
Oh, here, wait. Now we're.
We are.
What?
We'll see.
Walter, whoever's in on the side, you should see breakout rooms, and whoever's in breakout room 15 will just need to be repartnered with someone different because you accidentally sent me to a breakout room as well.
Sorry about that, Carly.
No worries. So you can probably see on the side if there's anyone alone, or it can just be a group of 3.
Oh, so what, do I take you out, do I move you somewhere else?
Move the other person who was in the room. Who else was in room 15?
Move to, that's Robin Plouffe.
Okay, move Robin to a different room then.
Let's see where I put her. Let's put her over here. How do I do that? Join 12.
On the right-hand side next to Robin's name, you should be able to see move.
Used to like building with those kind of materials, but I think from a scientific perspective, like if you were a kid, you're kind of examining the shape, the size, how things fit together, aesthetically.
That scared me. You're on mute, Walter.
Thank you, Carly.
No problem. Were
Was
you able to move Robin?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
We'll see.
Okay. Do you want to make me the host for the next breakout rooms just so I can make sure?
Sure.
Hi,
Or
Carl.
you can try it. You can keep doing it if you want to. You're doing great at the breakout rooms as well.
Okay. Hey,
I was
Barbara.
all alone.
Oh,
Nobody-
sorry about that, Barbara.
Nobody joined me.
Okay.
We're going to remedy that.
Yes.
How do we do that again? Did you do?
If you want to just pass me the ball just for right now, and then
Sure. I'm going to.
I'll move them in and show you how I did it so we can get Barbara chatting.
Yeah, I'm trying to do that, but I don't see a place to make you even a co-host now, Carly.
If you hover over on my name on participants,
Yeah.
and then click more. You should be
Make
able
host.
to.
Got it now. You're the
Okay.
host.
All right. Wonderful. All right.
Bye, Barbara.
Bye, Walter.
See you in a little bit.
Yes.
All right. Barbara, you were originally assigned to.
I'm not an introvert at all, so that was a
Barbara, I'm going to
scary-
move you in with, you'll get to connect with Robin in room 15. There you go. Thank you. Sorry about that.
Thanks. I haven't gotten an invitation yet.
You may have to scroll on your bottom bar again, just since we're already in breakout rooms. And if you click under more, you should see an option there to join breakout room.
Join breakout room. All right.
All right.
Well done, Carly.
Thank you. I'll walk you through this process before next time, Walter. I forgot that with more people, we may run into that where it's a little bit of navigating like the co-hosts, and you have to keep an eye on the breakout rooms. And if anyone's alone, kind of then reorganize them to a new breakout room. So I'll show you on Zoom how to do it.
I don't think I have the control again, Carly. Can you give it back to
You
me?
don't, yeah. So I can do it for next time, just because I'll have to navigate that again, where I make sure that there's people who aren't alone. If
Okay.
that's okay, do you want me to do the next breakout rooms too? Or do you want to do that?
I wouldn't mind.
Oh, can you unmute yourself? Sorry, I don't know what happened. I accidentally muted you.
Yeah,
There you go. You wouldn't mind trying it?
yeah.
Okay, perfect. So all you'll need to do is on the, let me show you if I
Can
can
you
share
make
my
me a
screen.
host again?
Yes, I'll make you host, but first I'm just going to share so you can see what you'll need to do next time.
We need probably to move people out of the rooms.
Okay, can you see this little box right here with the breakout rooms listed? Oh, it's because it's Zoom. It's not going to let me share
Let's
that
do
with
it
you.
later.
When you pull up breakout rooms and you saw all the different rooms listed, all you have to do is hover on someone's name, and on the right-hand side, it'll say move to.
Yes.
And then you just click on move to, and then you find a room where anyone else is alone, and then move them into that room.
I got all of that, what you described, except I put her in a room that had 2 people in it. That's what clicked wrong, I think.
Oh, okay, no worries.
Yeah.
Well, they're perfect now because Robin and Barbara are together.
Okay, we're about 20 minutes off, you know.
Yeah, I saw that. The housekeeping took a little bit longer. I wanted to make sure because we had so many people, new people this time. I wanted to make sure they were set,
No
but
problem.
yeah,
Uh,
I think we'll
so-
be good.
What that means is, let's see, let's go ahead and bring them back in. How do we, oh, I
Do you
need,
know how long they've been in the breakout rooms for, Walter?
I think about 5.5 minutes.
They have? Okay, let me send them a 1-minute reminder, a 1-minute message.
And then if you would pass back the host to me so I can practice that, Carly.
Yes. Okay. 1 minute left. Has it been 5 minutes already, you said? I forgot to set my timer. I'm sorry.
That's all right. I think we could go another 30 seconds.
Okay.
That's fine. Perfect. How much time?
And I think if we just kind of pair off a few minutes on like the whole group discussions, I think we'll be good.
Good.
Don't forget to invite people to take a picture of what they created
Let's
as
do
well.
that right now.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you for reminding me.
Oh, of course. Closing all the rooms right now, so we'll see everybody popping back in. I'll be excited to hear. Walter, if you can just make me a co-host, by the way, again, I just made you the host again.
Okay.
Welcome back, everyone.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good. I see lots of smiles, from which I'm going to guess that there was an enjoyable experience there, that you all enjoyed having a chance to share and to listen. Fantastic.
Walter, we're just waiting on about 10 more people to come from their
Okay.
breakout rooms.
Okay, well, we're going to just, we have
Could I ask-
extra time built into this session. I'd like to mention that we were a few minutes off at the beginning, and we're going to have an open networking session for another 30 minutes for anybody who might like to stay and, you know, chat. Is
I have a
everybody there,
question.
Carly? Well, let's see.
Everyone's back. Yes, Susan has a question. Yes,
It's a Zoom question, but my camera keeps stalling out, so I have to turn it off and turn it back on. If maybe in some edit, you could send information about how to make that not happen so much.
sure.
Okay, all right, good.
Try and help you troubleshoot.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. Okay, so just, is it possible that you could take your device and kind of articulate it or put it over whatever you were doing, kind of to hold it over there so we could show each other's, the whole group, what you did with the materials you had? You do that? Is that possible? I don't know if folks are back. Are you all here?
We can also post photos in the chat.
Good. Excellent. Post photos in the chat. That's great, Peg. Good. All right. Post photos in the chat room. Okay. So let's all just come together here again.
How do we post a photo in the chat room? Would we have to screenshot and then?
Peggy, do you have an answer for that?
Yeah, so go to the chat room and look on the right-hand side. You'll see there's a place where it has a file that you can attach. And I see that Lynn Hartle has done that. Thank you, Lynn. And then you can click on those photos to, or those files to open them to see them. I posted one and Lynn Hartle's posted one.
So did
First,
you
you do have to
screen?
take a picture, though. You do have to take a picture so that you have a file to upload. I think that's what,
Yes,
Yeah.
okay. So I played, I took a photo with my phone. I moved the photo from my phone to my laptop. I went to the chat. I opened the file icon, and then it gives me a choice of picking photos from various places, including my computer, which is what I chose.
Thank you.
Good.
I'll try.
Yeah.
We see the daunting challenge of learning how to use these various devices. I suspect it's not unlike what little children feel when they first find new things to explore. Very similar. Okay, so now we have time for group discussion. So it's a period, we're going to open up the conversation, invite anybody who might like to share about their experience, any connections you might have made with science or social emotional development. And then we're going to take a look at some exquisite slides that Cindy and Peggy are going to share with you to kind of deepen our insight and awareness of science. So anybody have anything they'd like to add or comment on? Just feel free to raise your hand or unmute yourself. We could try that. We don't have too many people. And just speak up a little.
Okay, my name is Ann Lowry.
I'll share.
We have Ann Lowry.
Let the other one go first.
I don't hear anybody speaking right now.
Well, I think we had two starting to talk, so I was going to let her go first. then I'll go second. How's that?
Whoever said that,
Oh,
that's
okay. I was letting you go first. I was letting Ann go first. I teach preschoolers virtually in an urban environment right now. So I tried to, my internet seems to be unstable right now too, unfortunately. But what I tried to do was take a few little toys. Can't hear me?
yes,
Am I back?
loud and clear.
Okay. I tried to take, I tried to take materials that I thought they might have at home, which was a hodgepodge. And I have mostly boys virtually. And let me see what I did. I took dinosaurs, and I do know we provided them with a container Play-Doh. So, and I know that they probably have odds and end blocks at home. So I kind of made a dinosaur land with a few
Wonderful.
dinosaurs in the Play-Doh and odd and end blocks. As far as STEM, and I'll upload it, but as far as STEM, I found myself starting to sort the dinosaurs at first I was thinking color, of course, but then from color I went to size. So I started doing that on the STEM side. I also tried to find a way for my little dinosaurs to stand up. And that's when I took the Play-Doh and tried to make a little river, because I knew that they would be able to stand in the river. I also noticed that I tried towers the same size. I kept looking for materials, so different materials, so that my little towers would be the same size. So that's what I found as far as STEM. And with the music, I did find it relaxing and calming.
Good. Thank you so much.
So I'll try this next week.
Yeah, good. It's wonderful to have you connecting the
You're welcome.
dinosaurs and dogs. I think Ann Lowry had something she'd like to share. Ann?
Hi, I teach pre-K, and we are actually face-to-face, so most of my stuff is at school. But I took some things that I have around the house that are actually using for classroom in a bag for when we go virtual. I use beans because I have that and I already have the sandbox stuff, and I'm not gonna pull that back out. And I just started building structures and bridges and designs, and I found I was going very symmetrical, and I was having fun building and seeing how tall I could get them in different configurations. And that's something I know my kids love to do, is actually build and then have earthquakes and then rebuild. They've been doing this on the playground for the past 3 days. And time just kind of disappeared.
Ann, are you speaking?
Okay. But my father wants to say something.
Well, I went back to the Little Red Schoolhouse where I learned all about play from the first grade teacher as a student teacher. And we would go out into the field and the community and replicate what we have seen, what we've done. I was influenced by that experience today because I tried to reenact being quarantined and build a fence around the whole construction. I also went up. I wanted to go up, way up, but nothing would, it always fell apart. And so I got frustrated. I used Scotch tape. That's not good. So I'm learning how to play again.
Okay.
And it's hard to play when you do it spontaneously. And I have to give a lot of thought to my own play.
Yes. Yeah.
And so take time.
Yeah. Good.
But thank you for listening, and thank you for doing what you're doing.
Thank you, Ed, and thank you, Cheryl, and thank you, Ann, for sharing. Especially delightful to know that at the age of 95, we can be present in our play like you are. Thank you, Ed. At this point, I would like to introduce Cindy Hoisington and Peggy Ashbrook as just supreme science educators who have some thoughts about play and science they'd like to share. Cindy and Peggy, would you like to jump in there? And there you go.
Sure. This is Cindy, and I'm going to get us launched. I really loved hearing most reflections on the building, and this is just a few of the things I heard was talking about sorting the dinosaurs, but it could be sorting anything by their characteristics. I heard talking about using one material, Play-Doh in this case, to help get something else to stand up so that it didn't fall over. I heard this idea of symmetry, wanting to make two towers the same size, wanting to make something symmetrical, and I think that's something we see over and over again. And this idea of replicating our own experience through a model. I loved that, the experience of living through the pandemic and trying to create a model with materials of what that feels like. So now I'd like to build a little more on some of those reflections and taking us a little deeper into the connections between building or constructive play and the four related disciplines of science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and engineering, STEM. I gave them the wrong order, but we'll begin with an overview of how building play supports children's engagement in each of those disciplines. And do want to acknowledge that we're taking, as the image on the slide indicates, we are taking kind of a science-centered approach. And also want to make a point of saying there are a lot of acronyms for STEM. There's STEAM and STREAM and other acronyms that include art as a primary discipline. Our use of the acronym STEM, or our preference for the acronym STEM, is not meant in any way to suggest that we don't value art or opportunities to do art. Okay, so physical science, put quite simply, is the study of the non-living world and how it works. And building play incorporates opportunities for children to experience physical science phenomena, otherwise known as stuff, that relate to a number of big ideas in science or concepts in science. So as children build, or as adults build as well, I want to make that point. We're focusing on children here, but this is true of adults as well. They experience this idea that objects with different properties, with different sizes, shapes, textures, work well or not so well in different parts of their structures. They experience that the way they design their structures, or how they put the individual blocks or materials together, makes a difference in how well their structures stand up or how strong and stable they are. And they experience different forces acting on their structures, including when they push or pull their own structures down, accidentally or on purpose, and what we think of as natural forces like gravity, compression, and tension, which again is not meant to suggest that we want to be teaching kids. Okay, Engineering is design under constraint, or the process of creating structures or tools or systems that meet our needs and wants, but having to use the materials, the space, and the time that we have available, and applying our knowledge of science and mathematics. So engineering is always present in building, play, and physical science explorations. And in the image on the slide, children are building a ramp system for rolling balls. So they're as side rails at the bottom to keep the balls from jumping off the roadway. And now they're talking about where exactly should they place the top of that ramp so that they can get the ball to roll as far as possible. We'll talk more about the distinction between science and engineering a little bit later. And now for technology. In this day and age, there's a real tendency to think of technology as digital devices and machines, like smartphones, tablets, and computers. But in fact, technology includes the multitude of tools and objects that we use every day, from scissors to staples to shoelaces to Post-it notes, that were all innovations at one time or another. And when it comes to building play and physical science, actually the blocks are really the tools for exploration. Okay. We could do an entire presentation on the mathematics of building structures, right? Building play has the potential to connect children to big ideas in mathematics related to numbers and counting, related to shapes and spatial relationships, measurement, patterns and reasoning, and classifying and sorting. Thanks, Carly. So I think, Walter, did you want to introduce the video? And then I was going to just mention a few suggestions of things people might look for.
Yes, I'd be happy to do that, Cindy. Thank you for those slides. That helps me understand again the importance of block play and using other objects. Yes, on the video, this is a little video of children playing. The video is actually 13 minutes long, but we've cut it to 4 minutes. And we're also going to make it available should you wish to go back and look more carefully at what the children do. But for a moment, we're going to look at 4 minutes of children freely playing. I had asked them to play for just 1 minute quietly, just 1 minute. And they went silent for 9 minutes and 34 seconds playing with these materials. Without any further ado, I think, would that do for the video, Cindy? Do you think that's sufficient? You want to add a little something?
Yeah, I just want to make a couple of suggestions. So looking at this holistically, as Walter suggests, in terms of the experiences that children are having, but also thinking about on the suggestions on the next slide, Carly, that you might look for, you might think about how do children choose and place different building materials? And again, that's kind of your interpretation as you watch. Or what strategies do they seem to use to make their structures strong and stable, or to create symmetry and patterns? I always find that jotting examples down while I watch is helpful in remembering what I saw. And wearing my science hat, of course, I always want to write things down so that I have some evidence when I want to discuss my impressions of the video. But we invite you to do that, to jot down notes or not, as you see fit.
And now we're going to see 4 minutes of children playing. Children playing silently, parents are observing and taking notes in the background.
Okay, maybe another couple minutes and then we'll see what happened. Okay, we'll talk about it. Another couple of minutes. You can keep going if you like. Maybe you're not quite finished. And maybe we could just, wow, it's amazing what I see here that wasn't here before. Does anybody have anything they'd like to say about what they did? Okay, let's just...
Made 4 beds, table and chairs, and a door,
Oh, it's a house. 4 beds,
I tried to make a school.
and a table and a chair.
But you're supposed to open this and everything falls on you.
Ah. Oh, I'm sorry, I missed could you say that again?
I made a temple, and if you turn a really big temple, and if you try to open the door, if everything falls on you, that's the only way you can get in.
That's the only way you can get in.
Unless you're big enough to climb up here and here and here and here and get to the top.
Oh. And did you say that was a temple?
Yep.
Uh-huh. Okay, and where was the door?
All the way down there.
Okay, good. All right, I'll just come around if you have... All right, there's somebody over here.
I made like one of those like homeless place, and people can sit around here if they don't have any food, and these are food for them to eat.
Oh, this is a place for homeless people if they don't have any place to stay or any food to eat. Okay, anybody else down this way? All right.
I made a rehab, and it's the rehab my granddad used to go to.
Oh, the rehab was for your granddad? Isn't that nice? Good, thank you. Anybody else on this side? All right, then I'll come around the other side, all right? So wonderful to see what you are doing, what you made. Makes me feel so good to just to be present with you and to realize what wonderful creators and builders you are. All right, I'm coming around this way. Anybody else? Okay, there we go. What is, yes, did you have something?
Yeah, I made a Star Wars ship.
A Star Wars ship, I see that, yeah. It's got lots of different parts to it, huh? It's wonderful the way you use those purple foam pieces. Whoopsie daisy. Okay, wow, that was close. Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. So I'm just going to say that's just about the end of the first part. Oh, okay.
Well, I made a cake bakery that you make cakes out of. There's different parts where you can add cakes to, and this is where you get the party designs at.
Ah, cake. Oh, I like that piece of cake right now. Right, good. Okay, anybody else before we shift our gears a little bit? Anybody? All right. Would the parents, any of the parents have any observations they'd like?
Good. So, a couple of things that you observe would be interesting to hear. You'll notice that the content of the experience had emotional bonding. The children's stories revealed that, and their constructions were exquisitely aesthetically pleasing to look at. The design, the engineering, all the I think At this point, we could open up discussion by observations and some more sharing, I think, by Cindy and Peggy. But first, anything from the group? Any comments? Peggy or Cindy?
Did anyone have any comments about the experience generally, or children's use of the materials, or any designs or patterns?
I have a comment.
Sure.
What impressed me was Walter's positive reinforcement and the lack of conclusion that he allowed the children to be creating what they were creating with whatever stage they were at, without requiring that they finish or name it if they didn't want to, or in any way impede their own expressiveness about it. And that's what he's taught me so many times. Thank you, Walter.
Yeah, so that I mean, you make the point that is how important the facilitation is, right? The kids need to get a strong positive message that there's not a right or wrong way to do this. What about looking at the kids and their structure?
And I see that Sydney has a comment.
Yeah.
I did like the video. Those kids are amazing. I just like the way that they spoke about their projects, and especially the temple. She had it all planned out. If you open the door, this will fall on you, but if you were tall enough, then you would be able to go to the top. So she really thought her project out with the temple.
Yeah.
And that was amazing. So I really appreciated her and respected how she built her temple.
You really zeroed in on one of the structures that we're going to come back to in a few slides. Thank you so much.
I saw a lot of balance and symmetry.
I also thought it was interesting that the subject of each of their different structures gave us a window into what was going on in their lives at the time.
Yes.
Whether it was Star Wars that might have been important to the little boy, or whether or not it was somebody feeding homeless people food to a rehab.
Beautiful.
And so there's a lot of material there to find out what's going on with children while they're also playing.
Absolutely.
I am 95 and I learn each time that I watch children play. I learn something new. I learn the fact that they want to go up too. And I learned it from them at an early age. And I remember learning how to paint and really apply paint with a swoosh with a paintbrush. And I dared do it not in front of them. I had to do it when they weren't there and practiced what they showed me. And it's wonderful that it's still alive in me.
Yeah.
That feeling of learning.
Yeah,
Thank
absolutely.
you.
Thank you. So, go ahead, please.
I have a play studio where kids can come with their parents and play. And I found that my language with kids changed. Rather than asking them, as I was kind of taught in early childhood, what were you making, or, can you tell me about it? I kind of came up with some things you can use. And one was, can you tell me what you were thinking when you put those pieces there? Or,
yes,
are you happy with the way it turned out? Instead of me, because I don't have the answers to that. So I try to constantly increase my vocabulary about what I say when this is going on.
Yes. You know, and I love these comments, and I do want to have respect for people's time too. So does anyone have any more comments they want to make about the video?
And of course, we can always use the chat to share
You can
our
always
thoughts
use
with
the
others as
chat.
well.
Yeah, so please continue to use the chat. I want to recognize some of the things that I heard loud and clear was this idea that facilitation really makes a difference, and we're going to get more into that next. I also heard that, you know, how everyone's structure was different, and also many of them seem to have pretty intense personal connections to children's lives. And the idea that that was connected to the facilitation. In other words, it was clear that there wasn't one right kind of structure or a wrong kind of structure to make right from the beginning. And children need to get that message in order to play freely. I also heard, you know, just noticed that kids had different tendencies. Some seemed to want to build really tall. Some wanted to build horizontally. Some were focused on entire layout of the indoors and outdoors, and some were really focused on kind of the enclosures and the insides of their structures. And the most important thing that I thought that came across for me, and I'm guessing for many of you, was that the children's structures and their stories seem to emerge simultaneously. In other words, the story and the structure, neither one were pre-planned, but they kind of emerged over the course of the time as the children were playing. Peggy, do you want to go on with the next slide?
Yes. Let's just take a look at some of the core concepts that children may be exploring and that we as adults can explore too. I'm not going to read the slide to you, but I want to emphasize that play and high quality science inquiry have a lot in common. First of all, they both require interesting materials and time and space to engage. I think that that's one of the most important things in my mind. And as well, they are both personally meaningful activities. You can ask a scientist sometimes why they study what they study, and they'll often reference their personal passions or a transformative experience in their childhood. And play and high quality science inquiry both incorporate opportunities to make choices about what we'll do, how we'll do it, and what meaning we'll extract from it. And they're both pursuits that are driven by curiosity and the need to explore, discover, and to understand ourselves and others, as well as the world around us. They are opportunities to do both in early childhood that will influence our later development and learning. One thing that I see is not on the slide is using natural materials. We want to make sure that we incorporate the natural world in all our play in addition to doing tabletop blocks and so forth. One thing we can do to encourage building explorations is to introduce the concepts across multiple contexts. So as I mentioned, using natural materials, different areas of the classroom and the playground, the neighborhood, and also with photos and images of different types of structures, whether or not they are local or from a larger area of the world. I do think using local structures is pretty important to inspire children thinking about structures and building. So how do we make this visible? Although children are clearly experiencing and addressing science concepts in their play, these aspects of play, the science aspects, are generally implicit. They're below the surface, as you can see in this photo. There's a lot below the surface. And it's evidenced by their stories. The children in the video, for example, were not generally focused on or talking about the science concepts that were embedded in their experience. There was one child who shared about how if you tried to open the door to her temple, the blocks everything would fall on her head or your head. So you had to be tall enough to get up onto the roof. She was very focused on the design of the temple door and how well it worked. So how can we bring the science aspects of building play to the surface? How can we make them visible so that children can share and think about, talk about, and investigate and develop their understanding of science phenomena talk about their science observation and ideas while still maintaining the integrity of their play. We have some ideas about that. We know that adults play a central and important role in supporting children's science inquiry. That's from the National Science Teaching Association's position statement on early childhood science education, which has also been endorsed by the National Association for the Education of Young Children. And this oldie but goodie quote from Win Harlan references 3 important things that teachers do to bring science to the surface. And we're going to focus on asking the right kinds of questions and helping children to communicate their emerging science ideas and thinking. So what kinds of prompts or questions or comments might you use to focus attention on the science if you were looking at these children's structures? Good early childhood teachers often use guided play as a way of addressing learning goals across the domains, but we can sometimes find it challenging to integrate play and science. So looking at these images, if a teacher wanted to focus children's thinking on social studies concepts or something about community helpers, they might ask some questions such as, well, who lives in your community? Who uses the temple and who uses the homeless shelter? How is the work people do there important to the community? So if a teacher instead wanted to focus kids' attention on the science of building using these same images, what types of questions or prompts, comments do you think they might make? I invite you to post these in the chat and to share your suggestions. How could a teacher help students focus their attention on the science concepts that they're engaged in as they play?
I'm wondering if for the
Yes. You're muted again. You have to unmute yourself.
I might ask the child, what would be a way that we could help a shorter person get in without getting knocked in the head by all the things by having to open the door?
You're adding in some measurement there.
I wanted to ask that child, did you design it that way on purpose?
And we can also engage children in asking about the way they use the different materials. You know, why were the purple cylinders useful in one position? And in what position would the block work best?
You know, I have a concern that I just wanted to share. I really like the direction you're going in, but it seemed to me to be like the children were guinea pigs and the adults were basically there observing them. And I'm just concerned about how learner-centered that kind of environment is for children, because I'm concerned that the agenda isn't an adult agenda, that it's more, you know, originating from the agency that children feel about what they're doing. So I would rather not prompt so much as to see what they come up with, which is probably really not scripted at all. And it doesn't have anything to do with a standard, right?
That's great. So what would you say to encourage them to voice their ideas?
I don't think I have to say anything. I think they're pretty much self-motivated, but I was just concerned that when you're sitting there across from someone and there's a kind of like, you know, self-consciousness going on there. And I was kind of disturbed that the parents were there sort of gawking at the situation. And I think the ratio of students to adults is off. I don't think children need or want to or should be the subjects of what adults think they should be doing. I'd rather see children play on their own at their own pace and not necessarily be, you know, something that we're
Yeah.
measuring.
Yeah, and I can't speak, I mean, I can't speak to the making of the video, but I often find that it's incredibly helpful to have adults just observe children for the adults' own learning.
Yes.
About what children are capable of, because if you don't sometimes ask adults to sit down and observe, all this play can be happening, but they don't really see the richness of it. So that was my sense of why the adults were there.
Yeah.
In terms of this is Cindy talking, in terms of your other question, I think you've really hit the nail on the head. One thing we noticed with play, that kids needed encouragement, they needed materials, they needed space and time, and they needed to get the message that their open-ended play was valuable and important.
Absolutely.
When it comes to science, we are looking at a little bit more of a role of the adult in terms of bringing children's science thinking to the surface. It's there, it's underlying, but in the same way that we might guide children's play to bring their attention to community helpers, for example, or social studies, or their layout of their community. In this case, we're using teachers' facilitation to bring their science thinking to the surface, so they can talk about it, so they can share their thinking with other people.
Yeah.
Does that kind of respond to your question, your comments?
Yeah, well, I just think, you know, our agendas are different from what children need to do developmentally.
Agreed. And that's why, you know, and again, we have to move on, but that's one of the reasons in science why we're working so hard to be sure that the integrity of children's play is incorporated within, and also the launching pad for their science, so that we're not just saying, okay, it's time to stop playing, now we want you to learn science. We're really trying to merge both of those worlds together to bring the, you know, because the science piece, yes, that's our agenda. We want to get the kids to follow our agenda, but we want to do it in a way that's meaningful to them.
I would just say we're working too hard.
Yes, it is.
It's the adults that need to play. The children don't have the problem. It's the adults. They should get out of the way.
I think this is a rich, wonderful conversation, but I'm going to have to, you know, hand it back over to Peggy to move on. I would love to talk with you more about this.
Wonderful.
Can I talk?
Yeah.
Oh yes, we do need time for children to have lots and lots and lots of experience playing without the adult guiding, leaning over our shoulder, etc.
Absolutely.
And I encourage you to type more into the chat, because there are some other things that Cindy and I would really like to share with you about science, and to hear your thoughts about it as well. Cindy?
This is a real opportunity to reach out to the neighborhood and to the community. For example, what do you know about astronauts and how they play?
Yes.
Why not invite astronauts in your area to sit down with you and ask them to think about how they were influenced in their own play behaviors.
Yes.
And what do they do out there in their spare time? And I interviewed Coddington, a woman in Sherborne, Massachusetts, who was out there 180 days on the planet. Do you know what she played? A flute every day.
Yes.
And we need to tap the information that we want to learn about.
I think you're making a really important point, and Kali, as you go on to the next slide, I'm going to reflect that in a way that may not exactly be what you were saying, but what I heard. One of the things we know is that science, and I think Peggy alluded to this earlier, science is in fact a very playful discipline, right? And one of the things we know from the research is if you interview people who now are in higher science education or have science careers, that in fact, what they remember as having launched their interest or their passion for science was not school generally. It was generally a playful, informal experience that they had at home with their families or, you know, close, other close adults or children in their neighborhoods, on vacation, in nature. And those are the experiences they remember. That motivated them or fueled their passion for doing science as a career, which I think is fascinating and something we really need to give a lot of thought to. Very few remember their early school experiences or the explanations they got from their teachers or the books their teachers read to them that explained concepts. If we can go on, Carly, to the next slide, that would be great. Not sure, can I advance the slides? Whoop. Peggy, I'm not sure what's going on with the slides.
Carly, we're going to go back to play is serious business, the quote slide. Thank you.
Yes. Take a look at this quote. Play is serious business. At stake for us are the ways we socialize and teach future generations of scientists, inventors, artists, explorers, and other individuals who will shape the world in which we live. This quote emphasizes that science, not only is science embedded in children's play, and I'm going to try to shorten this a little bit so I'm not redundant, but it's really important. Play is also embedded in science. So doing science as well as playing means being willing to be insatiably curious, explore the unknown, to do old things in new ways, and to take risks with long-held ideas. There is one major difference, and I think this speaks to the conversation earlier. Science, unlike play, revolves around evidence. So the claims and explanations that we make in science, unlike the stories that we tell through our play, must be based in evidence. At least the evidence we've gathered up to this point, and that may be very different. The evidence a 3-year-old has may be very different than the evidence that a 13 or a 30-year-old has. So this means that science also includes a set of agreed upon practices about how scientists will do their work. To me, I make the parallel that science is not so much as unstructured play, but more like playing a game in which all the players have kind of agreed to a certain set of rules. But within those rules, there are lots of opportunities for more open, playful exploration and innovation, and opportunities for having ideas that no one's had before, if that makes sense. Like chess, where there's tons of rules, but there's a million different moves that you could make or that you could invent within that framework. And play can also launch longer term science investigations. And so that's where we're going to where we're headed now. We're over the hump of our part of this webinar, and we're going to show you some documentation from real classrooms. Okay, so the science and engineering practices describe the work of scientists and engineers. And some of the terms are a bit extravagant in relation to young kids, but we'll show you examples of what they look like. We want to really stress, and again, given the previous conversation, I think it's important, that science in early childhood is entirely responsive. Carly, can you just go back for 1 second? Entirely responsive to children's developmental levels. So if you look at that photo up in the corner, which we saw earlier, but something I didn't say about it, even though it's clear how much kids are addressing kinds of these ideas of balance and physical characteristics of materials, when they were actually asked, because their building kept falling down, when the teacher asked them, how they could get it to stand up better, one of them said, I know what we'll do. We'll wear hard hats, just like construction workers do, and then it will stop falling down. That's an example of what I'm talking about, of meeting children where they are and centering children's experience within the science. So they're testing it now. They all put on hard hats, and they're going to test to see if the hard hats help, because that is an evidence-based idea. It's based on one child's very limited evidence, but evidence nonetheless, that when he observes construction workers and new buildings going up, he never sees them fall down, so it must be the hard hats. Okay, there we go. So just like children develop science knowledge over time, they also build their capacity to engage with the practices or to do science over time and across many experiences. Asking good investigable questions that can be explored. Sorry, Carly, you're going a little fast for me. I don't know if you may be trying to speed me up a little. Whoop, the next one. There you go. No, asking questions. Yep. Asking good investigable questions that can be explored with the materials we have on hand is actually harder than we give it credit for. And kids don't always use language to communicate their questions. We can also observe children closely and interpret and verbalize what they might be thinking from their gestures and their behaviors with materials and give them the language. Especially important for English language learners, by the way. So my guess is that this child is wondering, how can I get this tower to stay up? Or how high can I make it before it tips? But I'd want to check in with the child to confirm that wasn't in fact what you was saying. Okay, here we go. Next slide. The structures that children build are themselves models of actual or imagined structures. When teachers encourage children to create additional models using different materials, in the images on the slide, you'll see that this child has made models of her original wooden building, her wooden structure. She's made one out of sponges and cardboard, and then she's also drawn her structure on a piece of paper. Children's models really help us see their perspectives again. And I love looking at the triangle. If you see her trying to balance in her original wooden structure, trying to balance that long rectangle block on that little triangle. And she again shows the triangle in her sponge model, although it's a little harder to see, but it's very clear in her drawing at the top. So it's clear that that triangle and trying to balance that particular part of her structure was really important for that child and would be a place for the teacher to focus on. Okay, next slide. So once these questions do emerge, and again, it takes many open-ended experiences of building for children's questions to begin to emerge. Sometimes questions emerge fairly quickly. In this case, children in this classroom it was clear to the teacher that they were all trying to build high. They were really pushing themselves to build the highest towers that they possibly could. So the teacher interpreted this as how, how can I help them think more about the characteristics, but keep it incorporated in their compelling need to want to build high. And that launched this investigation of what blocks will make the tallest tower. So children all chose the materials that they wanted to enter into the contest, if you will. And they used their own bodies as measurement tools, again, resulting in really interesting discussions. If it comes up to the chin of an adult, but it also comes up to the chin of a child, but those towers are very different heights. How does that work? Notice that strategies, and again, these are in children's own words about the strategies they wanted to share to build tall towers. And then you notice at the bottom, the winners. Really important to say, the winners are not the winning children, it's the winning towers. We find that it's always best to set these investigations up as collaborative investigations and not competitive investigations. Peggy, why don't you take over from here?
Photographs, drawings, and audio recording documentation are data that children can reflect on later and analyze either by themselves or with adults. And when teachers encourage children to analyze and interpret data, they help kids tease out different aspects of their structures and make claims about what characteristics they think make their structures strong, stable, balanced, or useful for particular purposes based on their evidence. Having children analyze drawings or other documentation of their structures supports them to use increasingly more abstract forms of data and introduces new challenge. For example, what if my tower is taller than yours, as we see them here, in the classroom, but when we draw them, yours looks different. Yours looks taller. That's one way that the children might be able to think more about modeling as well as they analyze the data. Now let's go to the next slide, which was about measurement. Let's go to the one where the children are measuring. Go back, please. There you go. Thank you. And of course, lots of opportunities for measuring and comparing. How can a structure with more blocks be shorter than one with fewer blocks? Another way of having to think more about the structures rather than just saying more is better. You have to think more. What is better? And computational thinking includes identifying patterns. For example, we might wonder together how the way the blocks are placed in each of these structures, does that help them stay balanced? Another way of thinking about building blocks and using computational thinking. All right, the next slide, Carly. The needs and interests of children are powerful motivators for learning science and engineering design. As you saw earlier in that quote from Win Harlan, providing materials, asking questions that help children think, and helping children to discuss and communicate their thinking and developing their ideas is our role as educators. And we are better at this when we have had time to do science ourselves, just as we have had time to play together or play solo ourselves today. And then if we have an understanding of the nature of science and of engineering, that also helps us support children's learning. From Roger Bybee, we know that science begins with a question about a phenomena, and in this case, such as, why does water flow? And engineering begins with a problem that needs to be solved, and in this case, the children's question was, or their problem was, how can we move water from the rain barrel to the mud box? The children were engaged in engineering design, and they experienced the properties of water and the force of gravity as they asked, what kind of tube structure can I design to make water go to the mud box? So this was a process that took many, many days, over several weeks, before they were satisfied and achieved their goal and then continued their play using the materials for other purposes. In the next slide, we'll talk about engaging in argument from evidence. And this is positive conversations and discussions, not an angry argument, but it's for stating how you came to the understanding you have about a phenomenon. The conversations might be passionate, but the understanding or the claim is always supported by evidence, which might simply be, my sister told me that, or I saw it. But it can also be the collected data, and in this case, a children's documentation of the way the balls moved on the inclined plane. And as adults, we can model how to use statements to explain our thinking and then ask children or invite children to do the same. We can encourage children to explain their thinking by asking questions such as, tell me what you saw. Or as our colleague said, I wonder what you were thinking. That was a great addition. I wrote that down so I can use that next time. Through the discussion and the use of these kinds of prompts, children begin to use statements of evidence to support their idea or their claim. And our last science slide. When there's a nearby building site, the children can see science things happening daily or weekly as the changes stimulate their interest in finding out how the work happens. 2 years ago, after the cranes began work, this school invited the building site manager to visit them to discuss the changes that the children saw. So they were obtaining information. They asked questions and then they shared their work, their documentation, so that they could further their understanding of what was happening. They like to find out and they like to share their work. And that's a beautiful way to find out what they understand about the science concepts or the natural phenomenon. And if we provide tools such as books or drawing materials, writing materials, and we model their use, this tells children that this communication is a very important part of science learning. We can ask children to share their ideas and knowledge through book discussions or posting drawings to reflect on, and that will affirm the importance of obtaining, evaluating, and communicating information as part of science exploration, science experiences, and science investigations. This is the last of the 8 science and engineering practices, all of which, or just some of which, may be used by children and by scientists as they investigate.
I'm not going to say anything about the slide. I think, but just put it up there. I found this the other day and I just loved it.
We really appreciate the time with you today. Appreciate working in partnership with Carly and Walter and with you all.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Good. We thank you. Thank you, Cindy. And thank you, Peggy, for composing that art piece, sharing information about science and the stories implied in them and the meaning. Thank you. I'd like to, we're obviously overextending ourselves, and I typed in the chat room, we're just going to continue. There are several other things that we would like to do. The next thing, actually, we've juxtaposed the schedule to accommodate the needs of as many as we can. We'd like to do a breakout room for a few minutes so that you, everybody present, would get a chance to kind of talk about the experience of any part of this with another person, similar to what we did before. But before we do that, what we'd like to do is ask you to take a minute or two to journal again, to pause, absorb all of that data, and kind of put it back out spontaneously. Any comments or thoughts in this moment, just journal a little bit. So journal a little breakout room for a few minutes, and then we'll come together again and share some resources. Actually, I think Carly's putting those up now. But for those of you who can stay, and I apologize that we're a little late, this is an experiment for us, and I think we're going to go from 90 minutes to 2 hours the next time. In any case, I hope you can stay for a few minutes. For all of you who commented, thank you so much for adding that richness to this experience you're sharing, and for staying and playing, for building and fiddling and constructing and applying, designing, and engineering those little things you did with the dinosaurs and the blocks and whoever else, whatever else you used was wonderful. But let's do a journal if you can. Please stay. We will follow up with an email afterwards if you have to leave early, but that'll be sometime next week. Anyway, please take a minute and journal for a couple of minutes, and then we'll go into breakout rooms for a few minutes. Does that sound all right with everybody? Just go like that. Wave to everybody. Hi, everybody.
Good, Walter.
What's that?
I said, that sounds good. It's Cindy.
Good deal. Good. Hi, Maya. Good. thank you for being here. If you have to leave and if you can stay, well, extra thanks for being here the extra time. Take a minute and journal. If you don't mind, or doodle, just for 2 minutes, just a little something, 2 minutes. 2 minutes. And then I'll set up the breakout rooms.
Walter, we may have a small enough group left now. If you don't want to do breakout rooms, we can do a group discussion if you'd like. I think there's about, let me see how many participants, but either way.
How many do we have?
There's just about 13 people in the room. So might be small enough for a conversation, or we can do breakout rooms if you want to give everyone a chance to share.
Well, let's do both.
Okay, perfect.
Let's do a little breakout so everybody would have a chance to visit. They seem to like that very much. Oh, are you setting that up, Carly?
Oh no, you're the host again, so you have to do
I'll open the rooms. Okay. Not quite sure how this is. Looks like they've gone into breakout rooms. Where did everybody go, Carly?
They went to breakout rooms.
That was quick. You there, Harry?
I'm trying to find my breakout room. Let's see.
May I put you somewhere?
Please.
I'm going to try assign to, maybe here, let's do this. And then, are you by yourself there?
Yeah.
Okay.
I am by myself.
Here comes somebody else.
Okay, good. There's somebody else there.
I think you'll enjoy this person.
Okay, good.
It's Cindy.
Thank you for your thoughts earlier, by the way, Harry.
Oh, sure. So let's see. How do I get into the breakout room?
I'm going to sign you right there. Hold on.
Good.
You may have to click on more to accept it again. For some reason, in the second round, it gets finicky.
You should be there with Cindy Hoisington.
There he goes. Okay.
Oh.
Is anyone by themselves in room? I can't remember what room was assigned. I was assigned to, but
yeah.
I need to download the slides really quickly as well.
I was in a breakout room with Cindy, but then she left.
Oh, goodness.
Oh, I wonder what happened.
You probably clicked on the wrong button. That's okay.
I think people will.
We're getting some really good comments.
Oh, yeah. The discussion has been really rich.
So, I don't know how many people we have in those rooms right now, actually.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Once they're in the rooms, I'm not able to see how many total participants are, but you might be.
Did somebody ask for help, honey? Hi, Sarita. You're muted.
I don't have a partner.
Oh, here I am. How about that? I thought I sent somebody to you. Sorry about that.
That's okay. Well, maybe someone else doesn't have a partner either.
Yeah, I'm going to go look. Would you forgive me for leaving? I hate to leave you, but I need to go.
You go ahead.
I'll see if I can find somebody, hon. Leave the room. This is the first time I've ever done that, gone to a room. Let's see if I can leave breakout room. Okay.
Sorry about that slide progression earlier. I was clicking through on my screen, but I had it paused. I don't know if you know about that feature, but like if you need to do some back end work, you can pause your share. So everyone is seeing on the screen what you last shared. And then I'm like, busy pulling up the other slides or advancing. But the downside of that feature is if you're on your screen, it looks like you're advancing, but you forget that you paused sharing. So we got it eventually though. All right. And I'm putting the PDF of the PowerPoint in the participant guide right now as well for everyone.
Okay, terrific, terrific. Yeah, people were asking for that. Hi, Sarita. We met years and years ago at NACE.
Oh, Walter, you're muted too. Hello, Sarita. Lovely to meet you.
Yes.
Hi.
Yeah.
Is this it? Is this everybody?
They're in maybe they're in
their breakout rooms.
Breakout rooms. Okay.
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. I think the breakout rooms might have ended.
Oh, okay.
Well,
I was just invited to leave my breakout room.
Breakout rooms.
Oh, okay.
3 seconds. Yeah.
Okay.
Here they come.
Oh, goodness. Wow. There we are.
That was an adventure.
Where did you go, Cindy?
Yeah.
I don't know, but I ended up with Harry. I was very pleased because I was alone for a while.
Yes, you disappeared from my room.
I didn't run away from you, Peggy. Someone.
That was my fault. I'm sorry, Becky.
Okay, just checking.
Walter, the connection.
Anybody who we haven't heard from yet, who hasn't had a chance to say anything? Blythe?
Yeah, so, through this whole experience, I was thinking of something that happened with blocks 2 or 3 days after 9/11. So I have to tell you that my brother-in-law escaped from Tower 1 on 9/11. So I'm a pretty close connection to it. But at the time, and every fall, I teach the graduate level Introduction to Early Childhood class, which is the first class in the master's degree in early childhood. And so our class met on the Monday right after 9/11. And the schools had been open, I think the end of that week, the preschools were open. And one of the people in the class said, the children were building up their block towers really high and then knocking them down and then building them up and knocking them down. And I told them to stop because it was very noisy. So I pulled all the students in the class into a very tight circle. And I said, let's talk about this and what's going on in the classroom and what do you think? And we talked a little bit about block building because I think we hadn't gotten to that module. I have a whole module. I used the Hirsch book and some bunch of Walter's articles and so forth, but we hadn't really gotten into it yet. And we had a whole discussion, and the outcome of it was, and I wasn't the only one who was saying it, was you have to let the children experience building the blocks up and knocking them down, and you have to let them do it as long as they feel the need to do it. And so they left class and they came back, and the next week that teacher reported that she let them do it and they continued to do it, but the block towers didn't go up and down as many times. And then over a period of 2 months, she reported back to us periodically about what was happening with the block building. And that's what was in my mind through this whole experience.
So were the children just modeling what the life experience was for them?
Yeah, because as if you remember, the towers going down was on television 24 hours a day. You couldn't get away from it. And all of these families have a TV in the house. They might not have anything else. They have a TV, and now many of them have cell phones. and computers, because they have to have computers to be learning virtually. But the children were experiencing that, and the college is next to Trenton. And of course, we had a lot of people from New Jersey working in the towers, so some families were affected by it, both by people who survived, like my brother-in-law, and by people who didn't survive what happened. But the children took it into their block play, and the teacher was reacting with a classroom management strategy as noisy, and you shouldn't be pushing the blocks down because we don't want to destroy somebody else's block construction, and not thinking about why did the children need to build up those towers and push them, and have them fall down and hear the crash, and then build them up again, and know that they could build them up again and do it and have it be free play. So the teacher allowed them, after the class discussion, and probably some other people who didn't say anything about what was happening in their classroom, because there were probably other things that were happening that allowed those teachers to give the children the freedom to take materials and play with them in unusual ways, or to take art materials and create things that were scary and then tear them up, which happened, or paint them over with black, which is what happened also in classrooms at that time.
And now it's
Thank you,
going to be very
Blythe.
fascinating to think about what children, or maybe some of you have already observed this, what children will be building and doing in response to the pandemic, where so many more people have died than died during the 9/11 tragedies.
But we can't see it.
Yeah.
Think about that.
A child may be experiencing it
In their own.
Yeah.
and they probably won't know the huge numbers, but they will probably each have some experience of losing somebody, or having some experience about where you can go or not go.
We certainly
What
experienced
else
the
is different? Wait, let me just say one thing. The other thing that's different about this is that happened in one place and everybody was seeing the same things on television. Here, it's each individual experience because the children are not in their centers for the most part. Sorry, I
Right, it happened in
interrupted.
3 places: here in Washington, D.C., at the Pentagon, New York City, and also at a
Right,
Pennsylvania
right.
airline
Right,
accident
right near
site.
me.
We need to
Yeah, for
honor
me-
their experience.
Exactly. I mean, for me, it's all about looking under the surface and what are children's experiences and ideas that are informing their actions, and rather than looking superficially and saying, oh, knocking down those buildings is making too much noise, we need to stop. But in the same way that we can do with science, or we can do with any other kind of experience kids are having, look under the surface and see what's really going on.
Betty Jones writes about this experience and the importance of allowing children to do, just like you're reporting, Blythe. It occurs to me for the first time in thinking about this, that what Betty Jones is saying is, if we have all this horrendous tragedy existing in the world and on television, and kids see that, they don't understand that on the level that we do. So in order to understand what's going on, they play with the blocks. So their experience of the horror is diminished to a way that the child can experience it in their own way, with their own capacities. So in that regard, play offers children and adults the opportunity to kind of transcend the emotional trauma and heal through their own play what's actually happening within them, which is what's important. I can't overstate how important these moments of solitary play are for inner healing. It's an altered state of being that's purely within the control of the contemplator, the creator, who's in that state of being, which is a safe place, as we see with those children, out of which, and in the story that you just reported, Blythe, It's what's within the child that comes out in the structure deconstruction. They were aware of something outside and interpreted it in that way so they could accommodate it. It didn't destroy them. It allowed them to continue. I'll say in my life and in my art making, play and art making allow me to continue. And that's another thing that Brian Sutton Smith says, that it's a matter of emotional survival. Play is that. Robin, you haven't had a chance to say much. And Robin is one of the facilitators for the Play Policy and Practice Interest Forum. May I introduce you? And maybe you perhaps know some folks, Robin.
Yeah, thank you, Walter. It's just it's an honor to be here and be present with all of you today, and I've just enjoyed this experience so much. I in my little reflection of today, I really that slide of the child who built her tower with blocks and then re-represented in a drawing and in a model. I just thought that was really, really powerful. That to give the child the chance to revisit that play again, and to do the work of a different medium, like using a different medium to kind of represent the same idea. That was just really interesting to me. And the kind of science and other, I mean, there was literacy in there was science. I mean, it really sort of encompassed a lot.
Just to add a segue, that Robin is familiar with the idea of interest forums working together, Robin and Cindy and Peggy, for the future, to have a meeting about that possibility would be of interest.
The more cross collaboration, the better.
My daughter Sarita's here, and I haven't asked if I could ask her to say something, so I'm going to ask you without asking her if it's okay. Oh, there you are, Sarita. Would you care to say at all the application of play that you were involved with? Or I know you know Cindy from time.
I do know Cindy. It's great to see your face, Cindy.
I know, and I tried to send you a message, but I couldn't figure out how to do it.
And I'm on an iPad, so it's difficult for me to read those and do this.
Okay, that's why.
I guess the thing that stands out for me the most, my play workshops has mostly been at-risk youth or foster children and teaching volunteers. So I worked for an organization called court-appointed special advocates, and we would have our volunteers were assigned to one foster student or foster child, and a lot of times they didn't want to open up about their traumas, and they really have quite a bit of trauma that they're experiencing, and it's difficult for them to establish these trusting relationships with this stranger that's put on their case. And we started using these play, just like the way that you just played with yourselves today, and just like give them an open-ended material, and there's no right or wrong way to do it. There's no judgment. And oftentimes, like the young lady who made the rehab center or the homeless shelter or the temple, I thought that was really interesting because we witnessed a lot of that. They couldn't, if you asked them questions, they couldn't talk about what they had experienced, but they could build something, and then you find that you could learn so much about their story and how to work with them and kind of what they've been through. And just little things will come out like, oh, I had to visit my dad in jail the other day, and things like that used to build, and that experience has been a powerful piece. I guess that's it. That's all I have.
Good. That's a lot. Thank you. Thank you, dear.
Mm-hmm.
Phil, have you anything you want to comment on?
Yeah, this is a wonderful, rich experience, and I very much enjoyed meeting Lynn Hartle. I'd seen her name from various newsletters that you've kept sending to me from TASP. So I'm an art teacher in Atlanta Public Schools in a school of nearly 800 students. And so teaching virtually, welcome to my classroom. This is it right here. A former bedroom at home. And I really do miss doing what I did myself, and I'll just switch to the camera, which is playing with blocks with my students, creating, so you can see I have multiple cameras in my classroom here. And this is oftentimes kitty cam because the cat does often visit, and the kids particularly enjoy doing so art because they have to have something to show to the cat, the younger children, at the end of class when I do a screenshot of everyone else. Anyway, blocks are something that I have a passion about, thanks to Walter, but also my early childhood experiences, gathering the bits of wood and stuff in my dad's wood shop. But I also wanted to share a couple of resources that I have used with my students. And these are wonderful books here that are definitely all about STEAM. There's Rosie Revere, engineer, and Iggy Peck, architect. They are books that I incorporate into my instruction because I really believe that children have a tremendous amount of opportunity generally to do two-dimensional work, but rarely ever to do the kind of problem solving that happens in engineering, or actually everything in STEAM can be found in architecture. So since leaving the reusable resource fold about 20 years ago, when the center that Walter helped to cut the ribbon on and open up in Gainesville, Georgia, I've been involved with architecture. And here with the American Institute of Architects Atlanta chapter, we created a book called Discover Architecture, which has multiple lessons or things that you could do in a school, or you could just do you know, in homeschooling situations or whatever. So at my school, we've had it now for 10 years, but COVID meant that we weren't even able to finish the program last spring. So I have a passion for seeing how all of this comes together, the technology, the math, but the art as well, the science and the engineering. All of that comes together in architecture. So I was inspired to do this about a dozen years ago in Portland, Oregon, where my family lives, except for my wife. They're all out there, and our plan is eventually to be in Portland. I have a stepdaughter, stepson, 2 grandchildren, daughter-in-law, and then another daughter out in San Francisco. But being on the West Coast is where I aim to go, but being here, it's given me an opportunity to see something grow over a period of time, trying to bring more three-dimensional design thinking into a public school experience. There's, in fact, most of the blocks that I've got back here, I've gathered from at the end of the school year. Tragically, they kind of get pushed to be sent to the dumpster because kindergarten can no longer play with blocks. They push that down to pre-K or to early pre-K, and our kindergartens no longer have blocks. They no longer have, you know, imaginative play sessions. So I really feel there's a tremendous loss of three-dimensional design thinking, but also all the rich experiences that our presenters were sharing here that you can learn from block play. So when I saw those carts full of blocks, I longingly remembered when I was a pre-K teacher and sharing these with kids, but that doesn't exist. So
Is that because of COVID?
Well, it's because they are, well, certainly you couldn't do it with COVID because you'd have to cleanse every block after every play session. But it's just that curriculum has just been pushed further and further and down. Children are expected to read by the end of kindergarten and not by the end of third grade. You know, so there's, we find in public schools, there's that, you know, when you talk about adult intervention in children learning, I definitely have some real opinions with you, Harry, that it's unfortunate that a curriculum is so based upon the 3 R's and not upon, add a little P in there because, you know, for play, you know, so they have rare opportunities to do that. Anyway.
How about character? How about emotion?
Exactly.
How about social?
Yeah, exactly. Social, emotional development. So the things that happen in a block corner were profound in the negotiation and all the social. So yeah, I could go on about these things, but it's great to be with you all and great to see you. Hey, Peggy.
So I wanted to share a quote that I posted on the chat from Chris Fink, who is the director of the Exploratorium in California. Yeah. And he says that we live in a data-rich world, but an experience poor. Right? And I think that part of my critique is that oftentimes the agenda of education is more content rather than experience. And I don't think anything I've learned in my experience of education had an impact deeper than the experience provided for me in any kind of classroom. It wasn't the information that went in one ear and out the other, you know? So I just wanted to say that as much as I appreciate the academics here, I don't think that's what's going to be sustainable. You know, especially now that we don't have schools that are going to be populated. It's going to have to be the self-active learner.
Can I ask a question real quick, Cindy, right before you leave? I'm sorry if you have to go. But yeah, I think that we all have kind of concerns about play leaving the classroom. And I'm wondering what is happening at an administrative level, on like a political level, like how can we be activists for play in the classroom and in education and for children, period?
I think it's a real mess, to be honest with you. And I think with the person that said before, preschool is kind of holding the line right now. But even in some preschools, the schedules become very siloed. So there's now, you know, a literacy time and a science time and a social studies time, but they're holding the line with play. But absolutely right that in kindergarten, if you look at the research over the past 30 years, play has just declined dramatically. And there's not, I mean, part of the problem is that the people that make the rules and the policy don't have early childhood backgrounds most often. So you very rarely see kindergarten teachers. I don't want to say rarely, I don't like to make blanket statements, but there's fewer principals, superintendents of schools who have like kindergarten teaching backgrounds or preschool teaching background. I don't know what the answer is, because it sometimes feels like an inevitable match. But I think for me, it's about writing blogs whenever I can. It's about becoming involved in organizations like Defending Childhood. Nancy Carlson Page started that. And just kind of connecting with other play people and advocating whenever possible. So, for example, during the pandemic, there was a lot of opportunities to advocate for childcare, you know, through tweet storms and all that kind of stuff. But the importance of those, you know, we've got to hold the line in the early years with play. But I think your question is a good one, Sarita, and hopefully other people maybe have some other ideas. But it's a distressing. You know, I spent my life in preschool, and then started to work more in kindergarten and first grade, and was frankly floored by the gap between early childhood 0 to 5 versus early childhood actually goes to 8. And again, it's a systemic thing. A lot of kindergarten and first grade teachers don't think of themselves as early childhood teachers. But we know that early childhood goes up through 3rd grade, but they don't see themselves as part of that audience. They see themselves as elementary teachers, so that the difference is so embedded in the whole system that it's very hard to, you know, and doing professional development, again, another way to make change is to just do it individual by individual. So we do tons of play with our kindergarten and first grade teachers and get them to do it with their kids, and they inevitably come back and say, I can't believe how engaged my kids were in this. I can't believe that they had the capacity to learn science if it was presented this. I can't believe how much they had to say about their buildings. I can't believe how smart they are. I can't believe how joyful this has been. I mean, we hear that again and again and again and again. So part of my best way has just been working with people, you know, groups of teachers on in individual ways like that, on individual projects.
Well,
but it's a great question, and I hope other people have ideas.
What you need are the organizations that have some clout. For instance, the American Federation of Teachers, because the AFT Share My Lesson has lesson plans going from pre-K to grade 12. And there is a strong early childhood group within the AFT, and the AFT is all over the country. And the second thing is the organization of the people who work in state departments of education, because they are the ones who are charged with the implementation of the state standards. And as we know, the state standards become more codified with every passing day. The third thing is to try to get rid of EdTPA in all the states. We have it right now in New Jersey, and the student teachers have just gotten a second waiver for the second group of student teachers because they can't finish EdTPA.
What's EdTPA?
EdTPA is an assessment which states use as part of the certification process. The first states to use it were states in the southern United States, but now just about every state in the country has it. Pearson runs it, and they have to videotape in their classrooms, which is one of the reasons why this semester, for the second semester in a row, certain waivers have been given by my state. I don't know what other states are doing. And then they have to write this humongous report that goes along with the tapes. And it is coded, it's graded by people that Pearson pays to grade it. And there is, in every state in the country that has it, there's a movement to try to get rid of it. So far, we can't get rid of it in New Jersey, which is where I work. I live in Pennsylvania, but in the state of New Jersey, we have it. And I just wanted to mention that I put in the chat, Philip, which I didn't see your email, so if you want to get in touch with me, but anybody who would like to read Elizabeth Sherwood, and she gave a couple of presentations about it in the NAYC history seminar. Her aunt, Betty Kirby, was a teacher, a kindergarten teacher in the 1950s, and she had a set of Patti Smith Hill blocks. And the chapter is about how Betty Kirby used them. So if you're interested in seeing how people used blocks, that is a published book. The publisher is Routledge.
Good. Thank you, Blythe. I'm concluding that I think it's probably time to end. We've dwindled down to a mighty crew here, and forgive me, please. I'm just not sure what to do. Do we arrange to stay for a while longer, or should we just call it at this point and look forward to the next time we could be together? Would that be okay with everybody if we could cut it here?
I'm putting my email here if anybody wants to get in touch with me. That's my email.
Good. Thank you, Blythe. And
I also put my email there, my Gmail, and I understand that Sarita is in the Pacific Northwest. Is that right?
It is. I'm in Mendocino.
Okay, awesome. So yeah, I have a daughter in San Francisco, and then the rest of the family up in Portland. So maybe we'll get a chance to see each other face to face sometime in the future. Oh, that'd be great. So it's wonderful to see you, and I love what you're doing with CASA. That is where my partner in opening the Teacher Resource Center in Gainesville, Phyllis Winter, got her start in Florida with CASA, playing with blocks and other materials with exactly the same population, and with homeless and battered women's shelters. So it was a very, very healing experience, and she's has a thread of continuing that through her life, but now she's really enjoying being a grandmother in a small community up in North Georgia. Kudos for the work that you're doing. Absolutely.
She sounds like someone I should talk to.
Yeah. So Phyllis Winter, Walter will definitely remember her, and I still have a phone number, so I'll have to send it to you. If you could put in the chat your email address, I'll be happy to send you Phyllis's contact.
Excellent.
And see, Walter, this is what it's about. Because aside from the experience of playing, making connections and sharing, that is what it's about.
It's true. Developing relationships. It's the community. It's the community support itself. Harry, thank you for your keen thinking and contribution to this work, Harry. Do you have anything you might like?
I work for the David Lynch Foundation, and we're trying to address underserved communities, veterans, women and children suffering from domestic abuse, and middle school students. So, I'm concerned about, what kids or anyone who's trauma impacted is doing for themselves. It's a very important thing.
Yeah.
You have to help people with regulation practices.
Yeah. Do you feel a strong connection between people doing things for themselves and the availability of play? That play is something.
Yeah, I think play. Yeah, I think the mind needs to play as well, without an agenda, and I think that's the foundation of it. Because if we're kind of constantly under the stressors that are around us, we're not going to be able to respond. We're all just going to react. And I think, all of the trauma that's going on in the world and everything may be a gift of adversity that we can marshal to change the world for the good.
I'd like to ask you a favor.
Sure.
I'd like you to take a look at that whole video. I'll send you the link. And look at how it starts and where it goes by the children's own control without interrupting. It's a 13-minute. I'll send you the link, Harry.
Yeah, please do. Please do. Thank you.
And then we could talk about that. I'm very interested in your impression about that.
Yeah, I would be glad to look at it.
Good. I think I see Professor Klugman's hand waving. Ed, is that you?
He's unmuted, though. He's muted. You got to unmute yourself, Ed.
Oh.
Tell your daughter to unmute you.
Okay, go ahead. You can talk.
Being an elder, I find we are reinventing. I worked in Afghanistan for several years. Some of you may remember Ken Wan at Teachers College at Columbia University. He came home from Afghanistan and he said, "Hey, Ed, want to go to Afghanistan?" I said, "Where's Afghanistan?" And I had to look it up on the map. And I said, "What would I be doing out there?" "Oh, you'd be a methods and materials specialist." I said, "What is a methods and material specialist too in Afghanistan. This was in the 50s. Well, I went out there as a methods and material specialist. And just as I mentioned earlier, I learned from children to play. I learned from the indigenous culture what can be done. And for example, we had a merry-go-round. And we used that energy from the children to store the energy of the children in batteries. We took the batteries and used them in the classroom. That's what a methods of material specialist does. What did I do about painting? Painting murals would be wonderful. Well, there was no paint. So we went down one valley and another valley, and we collected samples of rocks. What did we do with the rocks? We started a paint rockery, and they made powdered paint for the schools. And we started to make murals on the buildings of school buildings, and they changed every week. And the children did that along with the teachers. I think we need to revisit what we have accomplished in the Agency for International Development, AID, and a lot of colleges and universities in the United States had contracts in South America, they needed it in North America. Point reinventing the W Work Project Administration, which needs to be revisited right now. It is amazing how we live in the most wonderful country in the world, really. Being a Holocaust victim, I appreciate coming here when Mr. Rosenfeld, for me, was Mr. Roosevelt. I called him Rosenfeld because he was a good Jew, I thought. And he told me that there are 4 freedoms, and we don't emphasize policy in our elementary or secondary or higher education for our population. And I discovered that in my mid-career fellowship at Yale. And I think we have so much knowledge sitting around right here that is not tapped. And we have it in our communities. When I came back, I became a principal in Schenectady, New York, and I helped to mention to them what the needs are. And the scientists created solar cookers, not from Abercrombie and Fitch, but they created it down in New Mexico with a little money, went down there, used aluminized plastic and parabolas, and began to create cookers, solar cookers, for $4.50 instead of $109 at Abercrombie and Fitch. And we have ingenious human beings sitting in this group. And I'm so proud to be part of it and have three things that we need to think about, and that is play, policy, and practice.
Yeah.
It's
Good.
a tripod
Yes.
that needs to be taught, and that tripod needs to be practiced, and we are practicing it. And I thank you, one and all, particularly Walter, for initiating this and having done this for many years. And I hope and I see you're continuing it, and I'm delighted that I'm alive and kicking and participating. And thank you for listening.
Yeah.
Most
Thank
important
you,
thing is that
Ed.
you're
And
kicking.
whatever I'm doing is in large part because of our relationship, for your mentoring of me. Thank you, Ed. And I'm so glad that you could be here today and to share as you do. Thank you. And we're going to do another one of these, but first I have to close this one. Thank you. Thank you, Blythe, for being at the end with us, and Phil and Professor Klugman, for Harry, and my daughter, Sarita, especially. I'm so glad that you could make it also today, honey. Thank you. And thank you for sharing about what you shared. Thank you. Well, I think with that, we'll look forward, please, to another time together. And thank you so much. Enjoy for the holidays, for Hanukkah and for Christmas and for all of it. Yes. Thank you.
Bye. Be well.
Wonderful holiday. Thank you, Walter.
You betcha, Blythe.
Thank you.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye.